Hi, my name is Elise, and this is my video game development presentation on Croatia. So first we're going to go over the history of games in Croatia, and then we're going to go into some market overviews after. So from the 70s to the 90s, Croatia was part of a state called Yugoslavia. In the 70s, Sega was the first company to start importing game machines. It did not import a lot because the country had a lot of restrictions on Western imports, but there were some. It inspired a Slovenian company called Gorenje to create their own system called the Getty 3220. It was released in 1977 and it had 46 Pong clones and 2 shooters. Um, and then as time went on, video games started to gain a little bit more popularity. There was kind of a peak in Yugoslavia when the Sega Master System was released in 1990. Um, and throughout the 90s, it was really popular for video game review magazines to be released for people to enjoy. Svet Computera for video games, and then Svet Igara for video game accessories. And then in 1991, Croatia declared independence. Um, it was one of the first countries in Yugoslavia to declare independence. Um, the first video game to kick off in Croatia, it was called the Rambo TV game. It was a Atari 2600 clone. And then as time went on, there were some contenders for the most popular system, especially in the 90s during the wars. There was Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and NES entered in 1994, but Sega, since it had already had a foothold in the country, remained more prominent. And then everything kind of turned on its head in 1997 when the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation released. That's when Sega started to kind of move to the back burner and other companies took the forefront. We're going to take a brief look at some current market trends. The leading consoles right now, as of like 2023, was PlayStation 5, the Nintendo Switch, and the Xbox Series X in that order. Um, there are over 200 video game development studios in Croatia right now, covering a large variety, the whole variety of video games. But some standouts are adventure games, simulation games, roguelike, horror, and strategy games. There's a lot of strategy games, like strategy card games, a lot of action adventure games, and a good amount of puzzle games too. The first game that we're going to look at and focus was probably the only video game that you've heard of that has come from Croatia. It's a platformer, Doodle Jump. Was released in 2009 by Igor and Marko Pusenjak, their brothers. It was initially released for the Windows Phone, iOS, BlackBerry, Android, Java Mobile, Nokia Symbian, and the Xbox 360 Connect. It came to arcades in 2012, and then a couple years later, it started to get developed into tournament playable version. You can still see it in arcades now. I don't know if the mobile app is still available, but any arcade you go to will probably have a Doodle Jump. It was a huge success. The brothers were very proud. They had created a couple games before, but this was the only one that really like took off. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was this video game called The Talos Principle. You may have heard about this one too, but more likely than not, you've heard of Doodle Jump over this one. It's a puzzle game developed by Crow Team, released in 2014. They were developing a game called Serious Sam 4 and were interested in the way some of the puzzles were working out, so they sidetracked a little bit and started working on the Talos Principle. It released on Linux, OS X, Windows, and Windows in 2014, and then Android and PlayStation 4 in 2015, and then iOS and virtual reality came out in 2017 with when a lot of companies started doing virtual reality, and then the Xbox One finally got it in 2018. the reason why I love this video game is because it has a philosophical storyline. It goes over a lot of talk on like what's a man versus a machine, what is considered sentience and humanity. Um, and a fun little fact that I learned while researching, during the development of this game, the brothers hired a guy to make a bot named Bot to watch playtesters and then try to complete the puzzles on its own. And I thought it was really interesting and fun that they used a robot to playtest their video game about a robot. And it received generally favorable reviews. A lot of people really loved it for its beautiful environment, the puzzles and the storytelling all tied together. I think it's a really interesting game. If you haven't checked it out, I think you should. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for watching.